Oh, the game of professional baseball, with its fair share of stars like Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, Fernando Tatis Jr. Not to mention that baseball's been around for so long, it's just about as American as apple pie, they say. But the current state of professional baseball, though, it's in a bad state. Between having a commissioner that is probably one of the most incompetent in all of pro sports, the tradition of keeping up with unwritten rules that ruin the game, not to mention changing rules in the middle of the season. Who does that? So you know what? What I decided to do, I'm going in. I am becoming the new commissioner for professional baseball, going from the MLB to the USBL. And not only that, we're going to have 30 rebranded teams in this league in a whole fantasy draft, not only to inspire competitive balance, but making sure that certain defensive plays can never happen, such as, well, just roll the clip, man. So with that being said, welcome to the United States Baseball League here on MLB The Show 21, hosted on the PS5. Let's go ahead now, meet all 30 teams that will make up this baseball league, as well as the roster configurations for each of the teams that followed after the fantasy draft. Now that we go ahead and got that out of the way, let's go ahead and see the 30 teams that are, going to be in the USBL. First, what you see on screen, we got the Baltimore Stone Crabs. They are going to be replacing what used to be the Baltimore Orioles, and they are going to be in the AL East. We then have the Boston Quakers. They're replacing the Boston Red Sox, and they're also going to be in the AL East. After that, replacing the New York Yankees, we got the New York Knights, the Atlanta Barons, and they're the first team that's actually going to be relocated. These were the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, but they are now moving north to Atlanta, and we're only going to have one team in each city, so that means the Atlanta Braves are going to be moving somewhere else, so stay tuned to see where the Atlanta Braves ended up going to. Up next, we have the Cleveland Rockers. The Cleveland Rockers. Now we go ahead and move to the AL Central, where we have the Chicago Freeze. After that, we have the Columbus Jets. We have the Detroit Leopards, which are rebranded from the Detroit Tigers. Then we have the Nashville Blues. And then we will have the Minneapolis Ducks. The Minnesota Ducks, they're going to be replacing the Minnesota Twins. Wrapping up the AL, we will have the Houston Astronauts. They are going to be in the AL West. The Houston Astronauts, they're going to be donning that purple and white and replacing the Houston Astros. Then we have the San Jose Marauders. They are going to be in the AL West. Then we will have a team in Las Vegas, and it's going to be well-deserved as well in this case. The Las Vegas Lounge Wizards, they are going to be replacing the Oakland Athletics in this series. Then we got the Seattle Pilots. The Seattle Pilots replacing the Seattle Mariners. They are going to be the last team, actually one of the last teams in the ALS. And then actually wrapping up the ALS, we will have the San Antonio Outlaws. They are replacing the Texas Rangers in this series. So then we go over to the NL, and if you guys have suggestions for what to rename the ALS and the AL and the NL, let me know down here in Twitch. And if you're watching this on YouTube as well, when it will go live, trying to push for Sunday, hit me up in the comments as well. As for the NL side for right now, we will start off with the Charlotte Cougars. They are this is where the Atlanta Braves end up relocating. Then we have the Jacksonville Suns. They are replacing the Miami Marlins. So they're going to go up north. They're going to go up to sunny Jacksonville, joining the Jacksonville Jaguars. Then we'll also have the New Orleans Kings. The New Orleans Kings are actually replacing the New York Mets. Like I said, I'm only going to have one team in each city. So the Mets, being the little brother, they're actually going to go ahead and move down south, go to New Orleans. Keeping up with the NL East, we have the Philadelphia Patriots. They are, sitting here, in Philadelphia. And then rounding up the NL, we have the Washington Senators, which actually used to be a baseball team, way back in the day. But they are going to be coming back as the Senators. Moving over to the NL Central now, we have the Indianapolis Indians. The Chicago club's actually moving to Indianapolis. Then we have the Louisville Colonials. The Louisville Colonials, they're going to go in. They're replacing the Cincinnati Reds here in this series. Then we got, one of my favorite, I would say, one of my favorite teams from a logo standpoint, the Milwaukee Bears. Milwaukee is known for his beer, so they're going to be replacing the Milwaukee Brewers. Then moving to Aurora, Illinois, actually. They are going to be replacing the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Aurora Lightning. Getting a serious look, in this one, so you love to see it. And then rounding out the NL Central, replacing the St. Louis Cardinals, we got the Memphis Bobcats. And the Bobcats, they're going to go in, representing the city of Memphis. So 2 teams in Tennessee. So gonna have to watch out for a little rivalry between the Memphis Bobcats as well as the Nashville Blues, fighting for supremacy in the state of Tennessee. Final division that we have, though, is the NLS. And starting the NLS, we have the Phoenix Firebirds. Now, they're replacing the Arizona Diamondbacks in this series. Then we have the Denver Bald Eagles. The Bald Eagles, donning that blue and white. And they are going to be replacing the Colorado Rockies. They're calling Denver home, putting that Denver name and all that good stuff. Then we have the LA Saints. They're going to be replacing the Los Angeles Dodgers here in this series. Following that, we have the San Diego Whales. The San Diego Whales going to be replacing the San Diego Padres here in the USBL. And then to round things out, the final team being revealed, the San Francisco Seals. And they are replacing the San Francisco Giants here in this series, man. So I'm really excited, to get things going. So we got to tinker with the settings a little bit here. One thing, we're having GM contracts off so that we don't get fired. We will have a fantasy draft, but we will not have legend free agents. That just ain't it. Personally, CPU roster control. We're gonna go ahead and we'll keep it off for now. We'll go ahead and that. We will have forced trades on for any trade days. Designated hitter, we're gonna turn that on. So what that should do is that both the NL and the AL will have a designated hitter. I mean, it just makes the most sense. And then we're gonna turn the extra inning runner off. Because that's honestly dumb, to be honest with you guys. So that's what we're going to be rocking with, at least in terms of settings. So what I did end up doing is I did do the entirety of the fantasy draft that I mentioned. I have that linked, it'll be either as an unlisted video or it will be a over on Twitch as a video itself. If you want to go ahead and check that out, that'll be linked down in the description. But like I said, man, we aren't going to have that much of a role. I'm going to auto manage everything, so I have as little of an impact on the Sim League as humanly possible. But yeah, man, let's go ahead and, take a little bit of a look, at what we're, going to be rocking with. At least, take a look at each team moving forward. So let's go ahead and take a quick overview of the 30 teams that will make up the USBL. And we will go ahead and start with the first team that we revealed in this intro episode. We got the Baltimore Stone Crabs roster. And it looks like they're going to be employing a rebuilding strategy, even though they do have 2 stars on the roster. Manny Machado, who is in his prime, a 28-year-old who's not... a 95 overall, got that A potential as well. Bat 304 in the previous season. And then they also have Justin Verlander as well. He's in the twilight of his career, I'll say, but still a 91 overall can still be a very good #1 pitcher for this Baltimore Stonecrabs pitching staff. Let's go ahead and take a notable look at who else is on the Baltimore Stonecrabs. We will start, Lance Lynn is also here, an aging guy, but an 87 overall with B potential, though. This is a guy that was an all-star last season, to say the least. And then they do, that's like the 1-2 punch for Baltimore Stonecrabs. The other 3 starters, not that great, but they do have a couple of promising prospects as well. Tim Cate, who will start at the AAA level. He's a 22-year-old and 68 overall. And then also at the AA level, they do have Justin Dunn, who does sit at the AA level, starting off as a 63 overall. At first base, there is Pete Alonso. He is the starting first baseman for the Baltimore Stonecrabs. Only 26 years old, but already an 85 overall, so you absolutely love to see it. But he is the only first baseman that is at the USBL level. At second base, there's Robertson Cano, who is a little bit of an aging veteran. Might have seen his best days behind him, but that being said, still a very good player. Will be starting over Nick Select, so it looks like they have their starter for right now and for the future in those 2 guys at the second base position. And then at right field, there is Will Myers. He is a 30-year-old playing at that right field position. 81 overall with B potential, with Adam Eden backing him up. He's 32 years old and a 75 overall. Then they do have a really promising prospect at the right field position as well. They have Blake Sobel, who is going to be at that right field position, a potential guy, and 22 years old. Next up, we do have the Boston Quakers, and they have 3 stars on this roster. They got Mookie Betts, Yasmani Grandal, and Nick Anderson all on the squad, all of which are in their prime as well, so you absolutely love to see that. But let's go ahead and see what the rest of the roster is going to be looking like outside of those guys. Starting with Ken Giles, he will be the closing pitcher for the Boston Quakers. He is 30 years old and an 84 overall. Should be a good closer for the Boston Quakers to close out games. At first baseman, they have Max Muncy. He is a 30-year-old guy with an 85 overall and B potential. Somebody to watch out for in the organization, though, is Grant Levine. He is going to start out at the the single A level, but he has A potential and is only 20 years old. He can climb up the ranks quickly, potentially. At second base, they do also have David Fletcher, who still relatively young, only 26 years old, but already an 87 overall. So he should be their second baseman for the foreseeable future. Coming up next now, we do have the New York Knights, and they only have 1 star on this team, Nolan Arenado. He's going to be asked, to carry the load here at the MLB roster, with him being the only confirmed star so far on the entire team. But that being said, there's some promising people on this roster that could become stars here in this near future. They got Brandon Woodruff. He's going to be the #1 starter for the New York Knights. He's got A potential and already an 86 overall. Tyler Grasnow, Jose Urquidy, also with A potential as well. So this could be one of the best 1-3 starters at the USBL level potentially. But we'll just have to wait and see, of course. They also have Cole Stewart sitting at the AAA level as well. He may only have 68 overall right now, but does have A potential, to say the least. Now, will be a little bit difficult for him to live up to those expectations as a 26-year-old. But, even if he doesn't live up to those expectations, I would not be shocked if he made it up to the pro level here pretty soon. Another prospect to watch out for in this organization is Ryan Levers. He's only 20 years old, a 61 overall, but also has A potential. Same thing for John Duplantier. He is also an A potential guy, but at 24 years old, it's going to be tough for him to live up to those expectations. At the second base position, Mike Moustakas is going to be starting initially for the New York Knights with Rogan Odor and Galvin Look, who has A potential, by the way, backing him up as well. Galvin Wood could be the second baseman of the future for this organization. At center field, Ramon Laureano is going to be the starting center fielder for the New York Knights, with Jake Moroneski backing him up. So that should be a promising duo at the center field position as well. Coming up next now, we do have the Atlanta Barons roster, or at least an overview of them. They actually don't have any stars, to say the least, on this roster, but they got some very good young players that will certainly, you know, make a difference right away, or will at least be expected. Most notably, Mike Soroka. He is, you know, only 22 years old, but will be asked to be the #1 starter for the Atlanta Barons, you know, and he has some experience at the professional level, to say the least, you know, put in some solid innings of work, you know, as well. Also going to be accompanied by aging veterans David Price and Kevin Guzman. So, you know, nice little locker room presence. And then to round out the starting rotation, they do also have Griffin Canning, who does have a potential, a 77 overall guy that should be, you know, interesting to watch moving forward in this series. Also in the Atlanta Barons organization, they do have Riley Thompson starting off at the AA level. He's a 63 overall, but got that A potential, so you absolutely love to see it. Also with A potential is Hans Kraus, who is a 21-year-old starting pitcher, only with 59 overall, but has plenty of room to grow. For the bullpen for the Atlanta Barons, they are going to be led by Tyler Duffy, who is the top reliever, and probably will be the setup man for the closing pitcher, Edgar Alvarez. You know, and that's going to be a good look because, you know, Edgar Alvarez is pretty young. He'll need some time to grow for sure. But, you know, beyond that, you know, not really anything too exciting happening in the bullpen, either at the pro level or, you know, in the farm system. At third baseman, though, they do have Yoan Moncada. He is a pretty young third baseman, I should say. 25 years old, got A potential, and will have an 81 overall as well. At shortstop, going to be playing right next to Yoan Moncada is Bo Bichette. He's only 23 years old, but already an 82 overall, though. He's going to be a young cornerstone for the Atlanta Barons moving forward in the left side of that infield. And then at right field, they do have Mike Yastrzemski. He is, you know, in his prime right now, an 84 overall, and hopefully he can maintain that prime for a long period of time because there's not anybody ready in the farm system to play at the USBL level. For the final team in the AL East, and by the way, if you have adding ideas to replace the American League and the National League with new names themselves, let me know in the comments as well. But in the meantime, though, this is the Cleveland Rockers roster going into season #1, and they will have no stars necessarily, but they have a lot of solid players in this organization as well, despite the lack of stars on the roster. For example, in the starting pitching staff, they have a good 1-through-3 punch in Jack Flaherty, Mike Velasquez, and Chris Paddock, two of which are in their mid-20s, to say the least. So that's going to be really nice to see moving forward. And then for closing pitchers, Kirby Yates is in this organization as well. He is on the wrong side of 30. He's 34 years old, but still an 88 overall, though. He can be a good closing pitcher at the USBL level, at least for the next year or two. For catchers, they do have Christian Vasquez, who is going to be starting at the USBL level. Backing him up is Sandy Leon, who is hanging on by a thread, you know, as a USBL caliber player, only 70 overall and 32 years old. How long will it be until he's called down and replaced by one of these younger catchers? At second base, they do have Graber Torres, who will be starting initially at that second base position, but someone to potentially keep an eye on is Mike Mundo. He has a potential, but he's 59 overall, you know, more of a long-term project, but only has a few years left of development, I would say. You know, so we'll see if he becomes a USBL caliber player or not. At shortstop, Marcus Semien is going to be starting for the Cleveland Rockers, but backing him up is Andreas Gimiez, who is a really young player, only 22 years old, a 74 overall, but he's not even the most intriguing shortstop in this organization. Brian Rakio is also in here. He's starting off in AAA. He's only 19 years old, but already a 68 overall. Has very good speed as well. He might be a year away from joining the USBL club. And then at right field, they have the oldest player in the USBL, Nelson Cruz, who still got that fantastic back, but he might be asked to go ahead and play defense in right field as well. Don't know how that will work out, but we'll see what happens with that. They do have a kind of interesting prospect in Philip Santiago, but he is 25 years old and with a lot of room to grow. He might be a top-end minor leaguer in the farm system, but I don't know if he'll ever make it to the show. Next up, we will go ahead and start with the AL Central. And starting with the AL Central, we have the Chicago Freeze squad. And the Chicago Freeze also do not have any stars on this roster. However, that being said, they do have a lot of very good players on this team. They built a very well-balanced roster, which I do really like to see. Starting with the starting rotation, they do have Noah Syndergaard and Dan Winkler as the two top starting pitchers in this organization. They'll make a good 1-2 punch. They do also have an intriguing prospect, though, in Dylan Cease, who will start at the AAA level, the 25-year-old employing that A potential as well. They also have a few pretty solid relievers. Will Harris, Alvarez Perez, and JB Lingelkin are all on the same team. All of them, experienced USBL players, and they are, I would imagine getting a lot of run, and I would not be shocked if this was one of the better rotations, or at least better bullpens in the entire USBL. Look for them to close out some games with ease. And then on top of that, Aroldis Chapman is available as well. He is a 87 overall still, even with him aging and being a little bit past his prime, but he can still close the door. Also in this bullpen that's kind of interesting is Rodney Contreras. He is a AAA player, only 20 years old, but at 56 overall, though, he's going to need a lot of experience, until he is ready for the USBL. Another interesting person to look at is Caleb Orr, but he is 27 years old. We'll see how much he can grow, despite the fact that he does have a potential. For a catcher, they do have Jacob Stallings, who is an 82 overall. Not a fast guy, but is a very solid defensive catcher. Has 94 fielding, 99 reaction, and an 80 arm. You won't be able to steal on this kid very often, that's for sure. At second base, they do have Chris Taylor as well, who's going to be a really nice all-around player for this organization. The only USBL player at second base for the Chicago Freeze. At third base, Kyle Seager will be starting off as the starter here on third base. But they got a couple of intriguing prospects ready to get into the wings when Kyle Seager starts to decline. Brett Beatty, who is a 63 overall and A potential. And then also Miguel Jurado, who's 19 years old, also has A potential as well. One of these guys might potentially be traded, so watch out for that in the near future. At shortstop, they actually have two very good shortstops on the squad. Andrelton Simmons and Yonder Bogarts, both very good shortstops, for this squad. Maybe one of them will potentially be traded as well. In left field, Michael Brantley, an aging veteran, granted, but he could come out here and still give you some quality baseball. At center field, they do have Alex Verdugo on the squad as well, in a bevy, really, of center fielders that they do have in this organization. But Alex Verdugo is going to get the start initially. And then at right field, the best player on this team, and Joey Gallo, who's got a hell of a bat when it comes to, power hitting. Look for him to try to go ahead and hit 40-plus home runs this coming season. Following the Chicago Freeze, we do have the Columbus Jets, and this is what the Columbus Jets roster came out towards. They got a star player in Ronald Acuna Jr., but they got some intriguing players throughout this roster as well. Don't get it twisted. Starting with the relief pitchers, Chad Green is a notable player to look at. He is in his prime right now, one of the best relievers in all of baseball and currently in his prime right now. But they got an intriguing prospect as well in Styler Kolek, who is 61 overall with a potential, but is 65 years old. We'll see how much of that, plays into his development, to say the least. Then closing games out, Roberto Osuna is going to start things, or close games for the Columbus Jets. Only 26 years old, but an 85 overall already. Look for him to grow even more as the years go on in this series. And then at first baseman, they do have Jose Abreu, who's a little bit on the older side, an 88 overall still. He can still provide at least 1 or 2 years of high-end baseball for the Columbus Jets. Following that, at second base, Colton Wong. He is in his prime right now and 85 years old. Could be a nice all-around player for the Columbus Jets. Also backing him up is Cesar Hernandez. He's also in his prime right now, 81 years old too. Shortstop position, Corey Seager is with the Columbus Jets. Only 26 years old, but a very good player for the Columbus Jets. They do have a couple of backups, and Kevin Varesco, who's only 18 years old, but will be at the USBL club already. And Oral Robertson. Also keep an eye on Royce Lewis. He has a potential as well. He could join the USBL club at any moment as well. I already talked about Ronald Acuna Jr., what he can bring to the table, but somebody to look after, Julio Pablo Martinez. He is going to be starting at the AA level. He's a 67 overall and could be the center fielder of the future for the Columbus Jets going into this season, maybe replacing Kevin Pillar potentially. Following the Columbus Jets, we do have the Detroit Leopards. The Detroit Leopards have arguably one of the best players in all of professional baseball right now in Jacob deGrom, so you already know what he can bring to the table. And the starting rotation that they are going to be starting off with is absolutely dangerous. The 1-2 punch, immaculate. Jacob deGrom, he's going to get the ball to start the season, but Chris Sale as a number 2 might be the best number 2 in all of the USBL. He can be a ace in multiple rotations around the league. Watch out for this 1-2 punch right here. Also taking a look at the farm system for the Detroit Leopards, they got Casey Meese, who's an A potential guy and only 22 years old. And then maybe not as heralded, but also as a potential though, Nate Pearson, who comes in with a 64 overall to begin the season. In the bullpen, they are going to be highlighted by Keon Kayla, has a very good hit per 9 and K per 9 as well. Very good velocity, very good break stuff. Just a very good person to have in the bullpen, ready to hold it down. If the starters do struggle at any point in the season, which can always happen, it is a very long season, of course. For catchers though, they will have Roberto Perez, more of a defensive guy, but he also has some decent stuff with his bat as well. Jose Braquino is going to back him up. He's in his prime right now, but only a 69 overall though. At third base, Aquino Suarez is going to be starting at the third base position for the Detroit Leopards. He's in his prime right now, 88 overall. I love him as a Cincinnati Red. He'll be a good look for this Detroit Leopard squad, that's for sure. But after the Detroit Leopards, we will go ahead and get into a little bit of an overview of the Nashville Blues roster. They do have one star in Garrett Cole, who's currently in his prime right now, in a 94 overall to say the least. They do have a couple of other really good starters in Lucas Guato, who could be become a star right next to Jared Cole as well, so that'll be an interesting thing to watch. And then Pablo Lopez on top of it. He is going to go ahead, the 25-year-old with an 81 overall. He'll be a very good pitcher in this league as well on top of it. Looking at the closing pitching rotation, there is Tommy Canal, who will be trying to close the door in the Nashville Blues, and he is really good closing pitcher, man. 81 overall. He'll go ahead and make sure that the job is done at the end of the day. Howard Kershaw, though, he has an A potential. He could be a future closing pitcher for the Nashville Blues. we'll just have to wait and see how he develops. For second baseman, Whit Merrifield is going to go ahead and get a look as the starting second baseman, 88 overall, with Julian Chavez and Jake Fugan as backups. Both still young players that aren't necessarily ready to be full-time USBL players just yet, but they can, get some looks, maybe as a platoon role. In left field, Eddie Rosario is going to be the starting left fielder for the Nashville Blues. Has good power overall and a decent defender out there in left field. A promising prospect to look at, though, is Terry Trammell. He's going to be the left fielder of the future potentially for this organization. He has the highest potential in left field. And then finally at right field, Hunter Renfroe is going to be the starting right fielder in his prime right now, 29 years old and an 80 overall. Power against lefties, it's barbecue chicken, man. We will now go ahead and move on to the Minnesota Ducks, and I'll tell you what, man, the Minnesota Ducks have probably the most exciting player in all of baseball right now. Fernando Tatis Jr., only 22 years old, but already a 95 overall. He is the future of professional baseball. Just the way he plays with passion, very good all-around player, can do everything for you. He's going to be a MVP in this league. I'm sure of it. Let's take a look at the rest of the roster, though. They also have a few good starters, though. Luis Castillo, Patrick Corbin, and then also Rich Hill, who's 41 years old, but, he can at least be a good stopgap while waiting for, some of the players in the organization to grow and develop. Edward Cabrera might be a future starting pitcher for the Minnesota Ducks. He has a potential and is also only 21 years old at the same time. For closing pitchers, they do have Trevor Rosenthal, who is, in his prime right now, 84 overall. So he, while he doesn't have much stamina, when you're a closer, you don't need much stamina when your goal is to close the door. For catchers, Will Smith is actually going to be the starting catcher for the Minnesota Ducks, since he's only 26 years old right now. And we'll have Rodney Presley backing him up at the same time, but he has a potential, so that'll be interesting to see how he grows as a backup in the USBL. I talked about Fernando Tatis Jr., but they also have an intriguing person in Jeremy Ehrman, who's 23 years old but has a potential, though. So we'll see how he ends up growing. It sucks. Jeremy Ehrman would be starting pretty soon in most organizations, but, when you're having, a once-in-a-lifetime player and Fernando Tatis starting ahead of you, it's going to be tough to get some playing time in this organization. So now we go ahead and move on to the AL West. We got Christian Yelich leading the Houston Astronauts. And, don't get me wrong, he's a star player, but it does look like he's not going to have too much help around him. Not a lot of guys, 80 or above, not necessarily maybe a ton of talent on this roster. They do have a couple of starters, though. Mike Clevenger and Dylan Bundy with, David Pearson, who's got a potential. So that's really good to see. And then they do have a couple of promising prospects for Tariq Skubal and Seth Corey, both of which are also a potential guys. But, other than Christian Yelich, he might be asked to go ahead and carry, at least the offense for like the Houston Astronauts, because, it's not going to look good, I would imagine, going in to this season. He does have center fielder Luis Robert to help him out a little bit, but he's more of a defensive guy. He's not necessarily, the best hitter. Good power hitter, but gonna have a hard time making contact with the ball, to say the least. Not a lot of love for Christian Yelich on the offensive side of the ball. As for the San Jose Marauders, though, they have the best player in baseball right now, Mike Trout, in his prime, 99 overall. Great speed, great arm, just great everything, except maybe the vision, 69 vision, nice. And it's a better put together roster as well. I would say at least better than the Houston Astronauts. At least, like, according to my opinion, they have a good starting rotation, man. No stars necessarily, no bona fide aces, but They got Sonny Gray, they got Zach Gallen, who could turn to an ace, and then Shohei Ohtani, who not only is a good pitcher right now, but he can also play out in the outfield. And I think he might also, be good of an he might be a better outfielder than he is a pitcher, so that'll be really interesting to see. We'll see if we can go ahead and utilize that full two-way player, because I know the two-way player thing can be a little bit broken sometimes. I don't know if they fixed it or not, but we're gonna find out. We are going to find out and see if they actually did that or not. Adrian Mohan is also a promising player for the San Jose Marauders going forward. Got one of the highest potentials in the farm system. Comes in 22 years old and has a 63 overall already. For relief pitchers, it's going to be highlighted by Giovanni Gallegos, who is going to be the setup man for the San Jose Marauders going into this season. Other than that, bullpens, it's always going to be an issue, to say the least. Going to be really hard to build. As we go ahead and take a look at the closing pitcher for the San Jose Marauders, Will Smith. He is currently 82 overall, so they got a good starting rotation and they have a good closer. Usually that is a good recipe for success. At first base, they have Anthony Rizzo, who is a 31-year-old, but 83 overall. And we'll have Yuri Guerrero gonna go ahead and back him up. He's still got something left in the tank. He could be a good backup for the San Jose Marauders. At left field, Alvarez Martinez. I probably butchered that name. I butchered a lot of names in this episode, probably. He's an 82 overall. He's got A potential. He can definitely grow into a star, especially if he develops the ability to steal, because he has decent speed. He can do it. Just gotta get him to actually do it. At center field, I mentioned Mike Trout, the best player in all of baseball, at least as a fielder. But, they got also Oscar Mercado. He has a potential as well. He could be, it's hard to replace a legend, one of the best players in baseball. But when Mike Trout is done playing, he can step in and be the new starting center fielder for the San Jose Marauders. That is going to be a big ass, though, to say the least. As we'll go ahead and move a state over to the state of Nevada, where we take a look at the Las Vegas Lounge Lizards roster. They got a couple of stars here, man. They got Cody Bellinger, and then they also have Steven Strasburg, both of which are 2 stars for this organization. Taking a look at the starting rotation, though, outside of Steven Strasburg, they also have Zach Wheeler and German Marquez, 2 very good starting pitchers to follow up Steven Strasburg, once he's done on opening day. They do also have a promising prospect in Kris Bubic. He is only 23 years old. He has a potential, one of the highest potentials in the organization. Could be a future star for them moving forward. Also in the bullpen, they actually have 2 very good relievers. Good relief pitching, just there's a demand for it and not enough supply. So having 2 very good relief pitchers, that's going to do well, late in games. Zeph Lugo and Jake Diekman, notable relief pitchers, but they're in their 30s, so they're going to have to continue to work on development moving forward. At catcher, they have Travis Denard, who is going to be the starting catcher for this organization, 81 overall, with Alex Avila and Tyler Flowers backing him up as well. Both of them, aging quickly. They're going to need to get a, hopefully Luis Torrens can develop or get a catcher in the next USBL draft. In second base, they do have Adam Frazier, who is currently in his prime right now, with Chad DeLaguerra going to go ahead and back him up. In left field, Lourdes Guerrera Jr. is going to be the starting left field, one of the more notable players on this Las Vegas roster. But he's the only, doesn't have anyone pro ready behind him. Hopefully he's got a lot left in the tank. Hopefully there's not a lot of injuries. I already talked about Cody Bellinger, who is the best player on this team, but they also have Jake Ferrari backing him up. He has a potential, though. We'll see if they end up trading him, because Cody Bellinger does have a ton left in the tank. We'll just have to wait and see what happens there. As we'll go ahead and look at the Seattle Pilots roster now, where Aaron Judge is the best player on this team. In his prime right now, 97 overall. You know, he's got a bat and he's got a fantastic arm as well. You don't want to try to run on this kid, that's for sure. But checking out the rest of the roster, though, they do also have Willson Contreras as a starting catcher for the Seattle Pilots, with Victor Caratani backing him up as well, the 27-year-old with B potential. At third base, Rafael Devers plays for this squad as well, but he's the only USBL ready player at third base, so maybe they'll go ahead and draft another third baseman in the future. At shortstop, they do have Tommy Edman starting for the Seattle Pilots, with Elvis Andreas backing him up for right now. But watch out for Greg Jones, though. He's got a potential. The 21-year-old could surpass Elvis Andreas pretty soon and get a call up to the USBL level. At center field, they do have Harrison Bader, who's only 26 years old, so he can develop a little bit further, maybe a mid-80s guy, by the time he does reach his prime in 2 or 3 years. As now that, with the last notable player being mentioned for the Seattle Pilots, we will now move over to the San Antonio Outlaws, led by Jose Ramirez, a star third baseman for this squad. They're in a rebuilding process, though, so we'll see how that ends up playing out here in the near future. But checking out the rest of this roster, though, they do have some pretty good starting pitching overall. Aaron Saval, Zach Davies, and Sean Minea, not aces, but very good starting pitchers. J.A. Happ, going to be a good veteran presence for the San Antonio Outlaws to round out the rotation at the USBL level. But that being said, they don't have any superstar prospects in the farm system, so maybe they need to get on that, here in the near future. But as we take a look at the closer for the San Antonio Outlaws, Jose Leclerc, very good closer, 81 overall. Jakeem Soria, could also be a USBL level closer, but he's sitting at AAA for whatever reason. I would not be shocked if he ends up being traded to a team that really needs a closer, for maybe a playoff contending team, if they do end up, going the rebuilding route. At second base, they do have Dylan Moore, the 28 overall guy 28 years old, 81 overall, with EY Light backing him up. He's only 26, but might have already reached his ceiling already, though. At shortstop, though, they do have Javier Baez, who's one of the better shortstops in the league. But that being said, they have 2 promising prospects as well at the shortstop position. Jose Devers, who's going to start at the AAA level, and Kiani Cavaco, who's going to be starting the season at the AA level. And then at left field, they do have Cesar Hernandez. He's the only left fielder at the USBL level. It is an 86 overall. Center field, they got Trent Grisham as well. He's a very young player, only 24 years old, but has a potential. So you absolutely love to see that. Connor Scott is surprisingly up here at the USBL level as well. He's only a 65 overall, but has a potential. He might be better served in the farm system. So we'll see how that plays out. Victor Misa is also a very promising player to look at. He's got a potential as well. Moving over from the San Antonio Outlaws, we now have the Charlotte Cougars roster. And the Charlotte Cougars, they got Shane Beaver, and they also have Marcel Asuna. 2 stars for this team, both either in their prime or still, maybe a year or 2 out from reaching their prime potentially. But check out this starting rotation, though. They got some good starters, man. Besides Shane Bieber, they also have Kenta Mejia, who's an 88 overall, and then also Luis Severino, who's got a potential and could also grow into a star in this league. Josh James has a potential as well. I don't know if he'll grow much more because he might be starting to reach his prime right now, but despite that, they are ready for it. They got some guys in the wings. Matt Manning is one of them. He has a potential and is only 21 years old in the process. He could be in the USBL level next season, maybe replacing Wade LeBlanc, but we'll just have to wait and see. Also, somebody maybe to watch out for, Billy Dickerson. He's only a 57 overall, but that being said, a potential guy. You can never count those guys out. They do also have a pretty good closing pitcher in Raciel Iglesias. He has 80 overall and has, some room left in the tank, man. He's got a couple of good years left in him at the very least, sitting at 31 years old. For first baseman, they do have Joey Votto, who may be in the twilight of his career, but that being said, still can contribute to the Charlotte Cougars squad at the end of the day. Over at shortstop, Tim Anderson, the 27-year-old, is going to be starting for the Charlotte Cougars initially, with Charlie Cuberson backing him up as well. For left field, I already talked about Marcell Ozuna, but not a lot of hope for the left field position. Maybe they draft somebody with their first round pick, to get the heir apparent for Marcell Ozuna. As that will do the overview for the Charlotte Cougars. So now we'll go ahead and take a look at the Jacksonville Suns now. And for the Jacksonville Suns, they do have one star, Aaron Noah, and they have a good number of solid pieces around him as well. So we'll see how their season plays out at the end of the day. But outside of Aaron Noah, they do also have Marco Gonzalez, currently in his prime right now, a very good starting pitcher as well. And then Alex Manoah, who is one of the best prospects in baseball. He's actually going to start at the USBL level. He's the number 4 starter. He's got a potential. He can be a future star. 2K Tresant could also be a future star in this organization as well. He has 69 overall. Nice. And he's only 22 years old in the prospect. Look at him to make a debut very soon. Same thing could also potentially be said for Jordan Holloway. He might be a couple of years out from the USBL level. For relief pitchers, they do have Chris Martin and Zach Britton. Has a couple of promising relief pitchers, 2 better relief pitchers. And, like I said earlier, relief pitching is in demand. And the future might be said as well. Terrain Patton Jr. is a prospect in this organization. I took a lot of the former Texas Ranger prospects from my Texas Rangers series that I did end up closing early, and now they will all be here in the USBL series, sprinkled throughout the league. At second base, they do have Kevon Biggio as a really good second baseman, 80 overall, a potential. He's going to be a future piece to build around, I'm sure of it. And then at shortstop, they do also have Alberto Mondesi, who's only 25 years old, but already an 86 overall. But watch out for Terrain Vavra. He is starting at the AAA level, the best prospect at the shortstop position. And he is only 22 years old too. So make, note of this kid. He could be at the big league level very soon. Finally, at left field, they do have Tyler O'Neill with Brett Gardner backing him up. Who knows how long Brett Gardner will still have, being 37 years old. At center field, they do have Starling Marte. He's a little bit older, but still has plenty left in the tank. 32 years old, still an 84 overall, still has good speed, but I would not be shocked if he starts declining in this season. They do have a promising prospect in Josh Lowe, but he's only a 58 overall, though. He's going to have, plenty of work to do if he wants to make it to the USBL level. Next up in roster overviews, we do have the New Orleans Kings. The New Orleans Kings, they will be headed by Max Scherzer, one of the best starting pitchers in all of baseball. But that being said, he's certainly not going to be alone. Hyun-Jin Ryu and Jose Barrios, both very good starting pitchers as well. And they got one waiting in the wings, Luis Guile, only 21 years old, a potential. Same thing for Hank Morton. He also has a potential. Same thing with Ethan Hankins. They got a lot of very good prospects, at starting pitcher. That's something to definitely watch out for, even if Ethan Hankins does start out at single A. For relievers, they do also have Andrew Miller, one of the better relief pitchers in the USBL, but he's 35 years old and frankly aging pretty quickly. They do have one promising prospect here at reliever as well, Zach Thompson, but again, he's also a few years out. Only 22 years old, he does have time to develop. For closer, they actually do have 2 closing pitchers as well, James Karinchak, and then they also have Drew Pomeranz, who's an 80 overall, but in AAA. We'll see if he ends up getting traded also to a team in need of a closer. For catcher, they do also have Yadier Molina, one of the best defensive catchers in the league. But that being said, though, he is, way past his prime, though. He can still get the job done for you, but how much does he have left in the tank, though? At first base, they do have Rhys Hoskins as well. He's currently in his prime right now at 81 overall. He'll be a good first baseman for the New Orleans Kings. And then on the opposite side of the infield, there's Justin Turner, who's 84 overall. And they also have someone potentially in the wings ready to go. Patrick Wisdom, who's not too far away from making it to the USBL. He has a potential as well. But currently in his prime at left field, they do have Yordan Alvarez, as he is only 23 years old. He's going to be a future cornerstone for the New Orleans Kings, in this series. As that will wrap up a roster overview for the New Orleans Kings. We'll now go ahead and take a look at the Philadelphia Patriots roster, a little bit of an overview for them. They got a couple of stars here, DJ LeMahieu and Bryce Harper. That is always a name for sure. One of the best hitters in all of baseball. Former MVP, if I'm not mistaken. As we'll take a look at the rest of the roster for the Philadelphia Patriots. They got a couple of good starters here too. Actually, a few good starters. Mac Fried, Jameson Taillon, and Corbin Burns. While not aces necessarily, they're still very good pitchers. Good 1-through-3 combo. They do have somebody in the wings though. Seth Romero. He is a starting at the AAA level with a potential, but 24 years old. Is now or never if he wants to make it to the USBL level. Jackson Rutledge, though, he may be at AA, but that being said, though, he does have plenty of time to grow and develop, being that he is only 20 years old. For relief pitchers, Trevor May is a notable reliever for this organization, one of the best relievers in baseball, but after that, it's very slim pickings for this bullpen. I'm worried that he might be overworked. Luis Oviedo, though, is a promising prospect for the Philadelphia Patriots. He's an A potential guy, but, has plenty of, room to grow before he's considered USBL ready. To go over to second baseman, I did mention DJ LeMahieu, but Jose Peraza is going to back him up as well to start year number 1. And then at center field, they do have George Springer. A little bit past his prime, 31 years old, but still a very good player. They got a couple of good prospects here as well. Michael Gigliotti, who is the heir apparent at center field. Just kind of waiting for the drop-off of George Springer before they bring him up. They do also have Riley Green as well. He's an A potential guy that will start off at the AA level. And then at right field, I already talked about Bryce Harper, but Jared Dyson, is going to back him up for the time being. But that being said, he doesn't have a lot of time left at the USBL level, so hopefully a few of these guys in the farm system can grow and develop. Moving on from the Philadelphia Patriots, we now have the Washington Senators roster, and they do have one star, their closing pitcher, Liam Hendriks. That's usually not a great sign when you're a guy that maybe will pitch one inning at a time is your best player. So I would not be shocked if the Washington Senators had, maybe one of the worst records in the league, to say the least. But they do have a couple of, promising players. Julio Urias and Ryan Yarbrough, both of which, 80 overall or higher. So that's good to see. They do have Mitch Keller and Matthew Thompson as well waiting in the wings at the AAA level. They could actually see some playing time very early on at the USBL level for the Washington Senators. Same thing could be said to a degree for JJ Goss. He's an A potential guy as well. He's only 19 years old. If he doesn't get to the USBL this season, I think he'll definitely get it done next season. So like I said, Liam Hendriks is going to be the closing pitcher for the Washington Senators, but they got a couple of good closers in their farm system as well. Juan Chavez and then Eric Ramirez. He's the more promising person, only 20 years old, sitting at AA. He might be the closer of the future once Liam Hendriks goes ahead and falls off a cliff. In left field, they do also have JD Martinez, but he's the only left fielder at the USBL level. At center field, though, they do have Ketel Marte, 27 years old, and we'll have Billy Hamilton backing him up. He used to have a lot of hopes and dreams, but He could never develop the bat, unfortunately. He still can be a very good pinch runner for the Washington Senators. Also at center field, they do have Brandon Marsh, who's starting at AA. Got A potential. And then also Edward Alvarez. We'll see if he can reach that A potential, but he's running out of time to do so. Finally, at right field, there's Michael Conforto, who's going to be starting as the right fielder for the Washington Senators. And then Josh Reddick is backing him up as well. Hopefully, George Owena or Mickey McDonald, one of those two guys can be ready to go, because this might be the last year that he's USBL caliber. Moving on, we will go back out to the Midwest to check out the roster overview for the Indianapolis Indians. They got a star here, Trevor Bauer. You know, he's a very good pitcher, obviously. You know, plays with a lot of passion. He's going to be the best player on this team. Besides Trevor Bauer, though, they do have Madison Bumgarner, who's also currently in his prime. Cico Sanchez, who's 77 overall already and is only 22 years old. So it'll be a very good developmental prospect, I think, for the Indianapolis Indians if they develop him correctly. Meanwhile, at the AAA level, Trevor Rogers is somebody to watch out for, you know, from the Iowa Cubs. 65 overall, 23 years old, A potential. Same thing could be said for Alexander Ventino, who's going to be starting out in AA, also with A potential. For closing pitchers, though, they do have Kalen Jensen, one of the better closers in the USBL. 33 years old, got that 86 overall. Then at second base, they have Jose Altuve, you know, one of the shorter players in baseball, only 5'6", you know, but a guy that, you know, used to be able to go ahead, you know, be absolutely dominant, but he's falling off over the last couple of seasons after the cheating scandal. We'll see if he can find his touch again in the USBL this time around. Meanwhile, at shortstop, they do have Francisco Lindor, 27 years old and 88 overall. Nick Onman could be a starting caliber shortstop for, you know, anywhere but the Indianapolis Indians, with Jared Trout in that third string role over at shortstop. In left field, Andrew McCutchen is going to be starting for right now, but watch out for Marco Misa in the near future. You know, he has A potential. He could be the heir apparent once Andrew McCutchen is done playing baseball. Moving on from the Indianapolis Indians over to the Louisville Colonials, we will go ahead now and take a look at what they got going on. And they actually don't have very many stars, but it does look like at least it's a very well-rounded roster. Starting with the starting pitching rotation, we got Walker Buell, Yu Darvish, and Dallas Kuher, all of which, you know, guys, you know, that are very good pitchers. Walker Buehler, obviously the most promising because he's only 26 years old. A prospect to watch out for is Hunter Green. He's one of the best prospects in baseball. He has A potential and is only 20 years old as well, so take a good, you know, look at him. He's going to be the future of this organization, I would think. Then at relievers, they have a really good reliever as well in Tyler Rogers, 84 overall guy, 30 years old. But after that, you know, it's slim pickings in the bullpen, to say the least, and they don't have anyone exciting in the farm system. For catchers, they do have Buster Posey for the time being, with Chad Wallach backing him up, but he's currently in his prime. Ronaldo Hernandez is somebody to watch out for. He could replace Chad Wallach when it's all said and done. You know, only 22 years old, but almost ready to surpass him already. And then at shortstop, they do have Trey Turner, another very good player for this team, 87 overall with A potential. George Polanco is going to back him up for the time being, but watch out for Alvarez Martinez. He's going to start at AA, but he's only 18 years old, already a 61 overall. He's about a couple years away from making it to the USBL level realistically. In left field, they actually have two very good left fielders in Tommy Palm and David Peralta, both of which over 80 overall, with Robbie Grossman also on the USBL roster for the time being. And then finally at right field, we have one of the better contact hitters in baseball in Charlie Blackmon, but he is the only right fielder for the Louisville Colonials, at least at the USBL level. So the next roster overview that is going to go ahead and happen is arguably one of my favorite teams in this series, the Milwaukee Bears. They are going to be led by both Alex Bregman and Zach Greinke, going to be two of the stars that are going to be on this roster for the time being. I'll go ahead and start by checking out the starting rotation for the Milwaukee Bears. Zach Greinke, like I said, is going to lead the way, but they also do have Charlie Morton, an aging pitcher, 37 years old, but still has what it takes to go ahead and get the job done at the end of the day. So that'll be something interesting to watch going forward, but no great prospects for the Milwaukee Bears, at least for starting pitching, at least for right now. Over at the catcher position, they do also have James McCann, who is in his prime right now and is, an 83 overall. Backing him up is Manny Pena, who, 33 years old, still a 79 overall, could still be a starting caliber catcher, but, he's definitely one of the best backup catchers in the entirety of the USBL moving forward. Check out second base. Jonathan Swoop is here as well, 83 overall, with Joey Wendell and Josh Harrison also on the USBL roster as well. Joey Wendell could potentially be traded, in order to shore up some other spots in the roster, maybe get some prospects, something like that. Third base, got Alex Bregman, like I said, one of the best players in baseball, 92 overall. That's not to be taken lightly. In left field, there's Clint Frazier, 26 years old, 83 overall kind of guy. Also at the the USBL level for the Milwaukee Bears is Cyrus Telshaw, only 20 years old, but has deep potential, so we'll see how high his ceiling is. Maybe he hit it already, maybe not. We'll have to wait and see what's going on there. In center field, they do have Victor Robles, but they got some interesting prospects here as well. Actually have 4. Monte Harrison, who's actually going to start out with the USBL club. They also have Travis Slagerty, who's only 22 years old. Brandon Davis, who's a 20-year-old in single A. And then Johnny Dennis, who's also in single A and is only 19 years old. Up next for the roster overviews, we have the Aurora Lightning. And the Aurora Lightning, they do have themselves a star in Anthony Raydon, who is currently in his prime, but we got quite a few notable players on this roster as well. Starting with the starting rotation, got Denison Lamet and Zach Palsak, two of the better pitchers in baseball, as a nice little 1-2 combination, so you absolutely love to see that. They do have a nice prospect at the AAA level as well. Luis Patino, he is going to be only 20 years old, has a potential, could make it to the to the next level here, maybe sometime this season potentially, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. And they also have a great closing pitcher as well, Ryan Presley, 32 years old, but an 85 overall here in the exact same time. Very good closing pitcher for sure, to say the least. So you definitely love to see that, that's for sure. But nobody really ready to take the wings just yet, though. At second baseman, they got Kiki Hernandez, 82 overall guy, with Tony Kemp backing him up as well, currently in his prime, but still barely hanging on to the USBL level, unfortunately. And then in left field, they have Dominic Smith starting for the time being. They got some interesting players in the farm system, though. Lamont Lane Jr., who's 27 years old but has a potential. But two notable players to look at, Brian Packard, who starts at AA and is at 22 years old, and then also Jeffrey Ramos, who's starting out in single A, but is a potential guy and is only 21 years old too. In center field, Brian Buxton is going to be the starting center fielder for the Aurora Lightning, with Brent Phillips backing him up for the time being, a younger player, and already USBL caliber, so not too bad. Then we go over to the Memphis Bobcats. And the Memphis Bobcats, you got JT Romoto, as, one of the best players on the team. And same thing for Giancarlo Stanton, who might be the, the big ticket getter, or, getting the people in the seats, for say. 92 overall, 31 years old, so he's in his prime right freaking now. As we check out the starting rotation for the Memphis Bobcats, James Paxton, is the best pitcher on this team, but they got some promising players as well. They got Ian Anderson, who's only 22 years old. It then also has Jordan Balcevic, who's only 21 years old, but already at the USBL club. So with that being said, this is a younger rotation, maybe on the bottom end right now, but could grow into something special in the future, depending on what happens. Conor Sebold is also a good prospect as well. He's starting off at the AA level. The 23-year-old comes in with a 58 overall and A potential. For catchers, I did mention that JT Realmuto is on this team, and good all-around player with the exception of stealing, of course. Mike Zuno is also, backing him up. He's a good catcher as well, one of the better catchers, at least in that backup role. So that would be good if JT Realmuto does end up getting hurt. Then at first base, they do have Matt Olson, currently in his prime right now, 83 overall. Great power against the right-handed pitchers, decent power against the left-handed pitchers. And then also has a great defender, great reaction, great fielding. Should be one of the better defenders at that first base position. At second base, they do have John Bertie, currently in his prime right now and only an 80 overall, but Michael Bush is something to watch out for. He's only 22 years old. He's going to be the future second baseman for the Memphis Bobcats. Once John Bertie does start declining in the worst way, because they can sometimes catch up on you quickly. At third base, they do have Chris Bryant, who's already in his prime right now as an 85 overall kind of guy, with Fernando Mendoza backing him up for the time being. Abraham Toro is something to watch out for. 24 years old, 66 overall, and an A potential. He could potentially replace Fernando Mendoza if he already hits his ceiling. Otherwise, he could grow into one of the best prospects in baseball. In left field, I already talked about Giancarlo Stanton, arguably the best player on this Memphis Bobcats roster. But that being said, though, Nick Plummer is somebody to watch out for in terms of the future at left field. Nick Plummer, he does have a potential 59 overall. Then at center field, they do have Kevin Kamara, who will start out with the Big League club as the starter, but they also surprisingly have Dalton Varsho at the Big League club as well, instead of Dom T. Williams, who's significantly better and has more potential. So that's an interesting decision for the Memphis Bobcats. Eric Pena and Antonio Caballo are going to be interesting prospects as well going forward. They're both under 20 years old, and they have a... Moving on into the NL West, we now go ahead and check out the Phoenix Firebirds and their roster breakdown. They have a star in left field in Juan Soto, who is a phenomenal hitter. Not a good fielder, though, so that holds him back a little bit, but, he's going to put some numbers up when he's up at the plate, should he be able to remain healthy. Checking out the rest of the roster, though, for the Phoenix Firebirds. They got two good starters, though. Corey Kluber and Carlos Carrasco, two guys that are aging quickly. Cole Hamels also aging quickly as well. This is a very old rotation, to say the least. So I'm worried about the future for the Phoenix Firebirds, to say the least. And I'm looking through their farm system. They only have one maybe promising starting pitcher, Xavier Javier. He's got a potential, 22 years old, but only at 55 overall, so he has a long way to go. So the Phoenix Firebirds, they need to figure out something quickly for their starting rotation. For relievers, they do have Devin Williams, who's a very young reliever, 26 years old, but is already an 84 overall. Maybe if his stamina was a little higher, maybe you move him over as a starting pitcher potentially. We'll just have to wait and see what's going on there necessarily. But they got a couple of promising players at reliever as well. Michael Peterson and Kirk McCarty as well, both of which are A potential guys, but in their mid-20s, can they live up to those expectations? For closing pitching, they do have Josh Hader as well. He's only 26 years old, but an 85 overall. He's going to be a guy that's going to slam the door quickly against, opposing teams. you know, if the starting pitching staff can go ahead and do its job, because they are aging, of course. For catchers, Austin Noah is going to be receiving all the pitches from the pitching staff, but George Alfaro is going to help as well. He's the backup catcher for the Phoenix Firebirds. At first base, they got Luke Voigt as well. He's an 86 overall guy, currently in his prime as well. You know, done some good stuff in the past, you know, batch 322 a couple of years ago, but has kind of struggled staying healthy. Let's see if this is a year he can definitely put it together. Meanwhile, at second base, they got Jeff McNeil and Jonathan Filler, both of which over 80 overall. Kyle Farmer is also on the roster, but he's barely hanging on by a thread as a USBL caliber player. We'll see how long that lasts. At third base, they got Gio Urshela, also in his prime right now, but watch out for Jacob Gonzalez. He got a potential, is only 21 years old. He's got a few years before he cracks the USBL club, but that being said, you know, he could be a very good player for the Phoenix Firebirds in the future. Finally, at shortstop, they got Gene Segura, and it rounds out one of the best infields in baseball. You know, they got very good infielders all around. Andrew Vasquez is going to back him up as well. He's a pretty young player too, 24 years old. But watch out for Cesar Atires Jr., a potential guy, only 20 years old. He could challenge Andrew Vasquez if he doesn't develop properly. Next up, we do have the Denver Bald Eagles. Finally, you know, getting Colorado out of their name and just changed the name to Denver. They got a couple stars here, man. They got Matt Chapman and Brandon Lowe, you know, two cornerstones in the infield, so you absolutely love to see that. That being said, though, starting pitching isn't that great, but they do have a good relief pitcher in Darren O'Day, who could step in and be a temporary stopgap as a setup man at reliever. He is 38 years old, so he should decline pretty quickly, unfortunately. And I'm looking at the rest of the roster. It looks like there isn't any promising prospects with maybe Andreas Gimiez, but he's already 26 years old, so I wouldn't expect too much from him. Maybe he's a high-end prospect, but that's as high as it gets. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. As for catchers, though, Sean Murphy is the starting catcher for the Denver Bald Eagles, 26 years old, 82 overall. Ton Murphy and Kurt Kinsella are also here at the USBL level as catchers, so we'll see how that plays out. Rafael Martin is an interesting prospect to look after, though. He's a 59 overall guy, needs to develop the power, but, you know, only 22 years old. He definitely has time to do so. At third base, Matt Chapman, I already mentioned, one of the best players on the team, but there's also a pretty solid backup, though, in Hunter Dozier, you know, so if Matt Chapman does get hurt, he can step in temporarily without too much dip in production, I would say, which, you know, with the USBL being a long grind, you never know. Moving on from the Denver Bald Eagles, we have the LA Saints. And the LA Saints, they got a couple of stars as well, Freddie Freeman and Trevor Story, both of which are currently in their prime as of right now. But checking out the starting rotation, though, they got a solid starting rotation overall. That's going to be highlighted by Kyle Hendricks, you know, currently in his prime right now, an 88 overall guy as well. And they got at least one promising, actually multiple promising prospects, actually. Daniel Espino, he's only 19 years old, but already a 65 overall. He could maybe make it to the big league club in the next 2 seasons. Same thing could also be said for Ethan Small. He's 22 years old. He has a potential as well. Similar overall to Danny Espino, his timeline could also be a couple of seasons from now as well. They also have a good closer that can go ahead and slam the door in Edwin Diaz. You know, 27 years old, 83 overall. He's currently in his prime right now, and you love to see that. At first base, I did talk about Freddie Freeman being the best player on the team, but they have a good backup in Edwin Encarnacion. However, he's 38 years old. He could drop off very quickly, and you don't have anybody ready in the wings just yet. So watch out with what's going on here at the first base position. Over at third base, they do have Brian Anderson as the starting third baseman for the LA Saints, an 80 overall and 27 years old. And then at shortstop, you know, Trevor Story is the guy as of right now, But when Trevor Story is done, they got some guys ready to go. Fredis Nova, a potential guy, it's 20 years old. They also have Reynald Delgado. He's only 19, also an A potential guy, but only a 62 overall. So the future, is taken care of already at the shortstop position. Next up, we have the San Diego Whales, and the San Diego Whales are going to be highlighted by Clayton Kershaw, who is a former MVP. It's always good to have an MVP, for, able to pick him up in the fantasy draft, all of that good stuff. But checking out the rest of the roster, though, they do also have Lance McCullers Jr., and, McCullers Jr., very good starting pitcher, very good number 2. Jesus Luzardo also could be a very good starting pitcher in the future. A potential 74 overall already, could be a future star for the San Diego Whales. Meanwhile, in the farm system, keep an eye out for Jackson Goodard as well. He's a potential guy, 61 overall. Then over at second base, take a look at Jake Cronenworth. In his prime right now, 85 overall guy, but he might start declining a little bit early because he only has C potential. Hernandez Perez is going to back him up for the time being. He's also in his prime as of right now, but only a 76 overall. At third base, Brian Hayes is, probably the best young player for the San Diego Whales, 24 years old, 81 overall, so you love to see that. They also have a couple of good prospects at the third base position as well, and Aaron Schlunk, who is a potential guy, and then Jay Escobar, who's a potential but 25 years old. For shortstop, they got Carlos Correa, who's an 87 overall guy, also a younger infielder, so he's going to be around for a long time, I imagine. Luis Suarez and Braden Rogers, both promising prospects, and both at the USBL level already. Another very good prospect that's not at the big league club yet, O'Neal Cruz, 64 overall, only 21 years old. In center field, they got Randy Arozarena, also a younger player as well, 26 years old. You love to see the youth movement in play, and, maybe they can be a playoff team, right from the jump. We'll just have to go ahead and wait and see. And the final team that's getting a roster overview is the San Francisco Seals. And this team is going to be highlighted by Ozzy Albies and Josh Donaldson. Albies, granted, only 24 years old too. He's going to be a cornerstone for a very long time for the San Francisco Seals squad. As we will go ahead and check out the rest of the roster for the San Francisco Seals. They got Blake Snell and Framber Valdez as well, two nice pitchers, but they are already in their prime, so I don't know how much more they're going to end up growing here for the time being. And they only have one promising prospect, Brandon Malone, but has a long way to go before making it to the big league club. He's only a 58 overall, but the potential is certainly there if he's developed properly. We do also have a great closer though. Brad Hand is available. He's an 86 overall guy. And then they also have Ernest Cabrera waiting in the wings. He's an A potential guy, but 27 years old though. How much more does he actually grow? And can he become a USBL caliber player? At catcher, Salvador Perez is playing catcher for the San Francisco Seals, with Austin Hedges backing him up for the time being. Both of these guys are currently in their prime. Then at first base, they have Paul Goldschmidt, actually, an older player, but still has what it takes to get the job done, particularly with the power numbers when going up against right-handed pitchers. Bobby Dahlbeck is backing him up, but he's only 25 years old. He could potentially be the future of the first base position for the San Francisco Seals, but we'll just have to wait and see. At second base, I already talked about Ozzy Albies and what he can do for this franchise, but Joe Panik is going to back him up for the time being. And then also Marcos Brito, he's only 19 years old, has a potential, but only a 61 overall. Now, Joe Panik being a stopgap before Marcus Brito is ready to go for USBL action. At third base, I already talked about Josh Donaldson and what he can do for this organization, at least with the good power hitting and, being a good defender overall. There is also a prospect that could grow into a USBL player, and that's Samuel Guzman, 21 years old, but only a 51 overall. If he can fulfill his potential, that's going to be good for San Francisco, but that may not be very likely because of the work that needs to be done. Guys, that is actually going to wrap up all of the roster overviews for all 30 teams in the USBL. So next episode, we are going to have opening day, and there's going to be close to a dozen games that I'm going to show for you guys. It's going to be an exciting one. So if you're excited about this series as I am, I need you guys to do me a favor. Smash that like button, as well as hit subscribe if you do happen to be brand new. This is John J. Gaming on the mic signing off, but hoping you're all out there having a wonderful day. Take care, everybody.